So yeah, thanks everyone for taking the time to join this month. The goal of these calls, the regenerative video chats, is to give people the opportunity to kind of connect and share news, share kind of events, or really anything they've got going on, so that we can all kind of better collaborate as a network working in the regenerative ag and land use space, and beyond climate and food as well. So as I mentioned, we record these calls and we post them to RI's YouTube channel. So if ever you want to check out an old call, you're more than welcome to visit that. I included it in my email with a link today. I think everyone here is familiar with Zoom. Is that correct? Does anyone need a brief intro to the Zoom tool? All right, I will take that as a no, but feel free to post any questions you have about Zoom in the chat. If there's anything you want to cover today in terms of topics, can you also post that in the chat so that we can make sure that we get to it? But we can just get started with a round of intros. I can start. My name is Alex, and I work with Regeneration International, and I'm based in central Mexico, but originally from Montreal. And Manu the King, do you want to go next?
Yes. My name is Max. Max Gordon. I'm living in Syracuse, New York. I'm interested in, indigenous people and their relationship with landscapes.
Did anyone else lose audio from Max?
No.
Just me.
Yeah. So I'm trying to kind of recreate and learn as much as possible about different tribes and different life ways and different landscapes and the relationship and interconnectedness of all those elements.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Max. Abby.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Smith. I'm the Global Network Coordinator for the Savory Institute, and I feel like I'm amongst all friends now. I think the only person I don't know is perhaps Dan. I don't know if Dan and I have met, but I've been on the call with others, and there's other Savory Global Network members here, and so it's really great to be amongst friends. Let's see, I live in Northern California, far Northern California. And and I've been working with Alex to get all of our hubs up on the Regeneration Hub platform. So we're getting there slowly, but it's been a really fun project, and I really enjoy this group. So thanks.
Yeah. For those of you, just shout out to the Regeneration Hub. It's been awesome working with Abby on getting the Savory Hubs up there, so that they're such a leader in this movement and restoring land, and so it's really great to have them up there. But if anyone's not connected yet, I highly recommend you check it out. I'll post a link. Mm-hmm. Michael, do you want to go next?
Yep, sure. Just need to unmute. So my name is Michael. As Abby already referenced, I live in Virginia. I run a company called Foodways. That's food and then Waze, W-A-Z-E. And our mission is really focused on the consumer. So we want to really help consumers better understand and be able to locate sources of regenerative food. So we spend a lot of time on farms, identifying farms that have been committed to these practices. And then by extension, we are trying to identify the best restaurants and markets, cafes within local communities that people can go to. And these are places, that are, sort of what I call beyond that whole farm to table phase, but really places that really understand the importance of sourcing a type of food, whether it's meat or, grains at a bakery or, of course, vegetables. And so we are based in Virginia with hopes and goals of expanding not just nationwide, but hopefully someday worldwide. And so being connected in with the regenerative movement is so critical for what we are doing. Being a Savory champion, being involved with RI, being involved with, I've been doing local meetups here with the Organic Consumers Association, and those have been awesome. So anyway, it's great to be networking in with people. The BFA, I should not forget about that either, Dan. I think you probably don't remember me, but I was at your event in Richmond a month or so ago, and I have gotten to be very connected with Jessica Smith. So anyway, being involved with groups like this is just really instrumental for what I'm trying to do in my mission with Foodways, and helping really bring sort of the advocacy and the grassroots efforts directly to the consumer, preaching to a lot of nobodies right now, but hopefully, with a lot of patience and a lot of persistence on our collective parts, that we can really get this in front of the consumer. Actually, we had an event in Richmond the other night, and there were about a little more than a dozen people there, and it was actually really energizing just to see people, that there actually were people there who, were really kind of pumped about this and really understood the importance of it. So anyway, so that's a long introduction, and thanks so much, and good to see familiar faces.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. I posted a link to Foodways if anyone wants to check it out. It's a really great tool. Yeah. Adam, do you want to go next? Introduction?
Sure. I'm Adam Sachs with Biodiversity for a Livable Climate. I've met most of the people here in one way or another. There are two faces that I don't recognize, Joanne S. and somebody looking to her right.
Hi. Hello.
And we'll hear from you soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Latest news is a couple of things. Michael Kravchuk just did a tour of the United States, and Abby, I'm wondering if you got to see him when he was up in Northern California.
I didn't. He didn't come quite as far north as me.
Quite far enough, yeah.
Yeah, but I did connect him with our friend who is involved in some water-related documentaries, and I did connect with Russ Spear, who was the coordinator, and so we've had some good conversations as well.
Excellent. Yeah, so we sponsored his tour in Massachusetts. He was down here for a week and saw lots of people. And I got to hear his presentation many times. And Judy, you'll appreciate this. I'm starting to understand it. And it is a very profound
Adam, for those who might not know him, do you want to maybe mention the themes that he works in?
Michael Kravchuk is a Slovakian hydrologist and engineer who early on in his career became disillusioned with concrete dams and indirectly rediscovered beaverhood. I don't know that he would quite put it that way, but he's had thousands of people working on creating small wooden and stone dams to slow down water, mostly in mountainous places where there are erosion gullies, and to turn them into a real land again that grows lots of things and does what water is supposed to do. And there's a lot of theory and practice behind it. And from Michael's perspective, global warming is a consequence of water running off of the continents and into the oceans. And the water loss is enough to raise sea level by a couple of millimeters a year, and to dry out the continents, to leave us with very hot, desertified landscapes, not the least of which are cities. So
you guys brought him on tour recently in the U.S.?
Well, he has a new group. We're their fiscal sponsor for their moment. It's called Voices of Water for Climate. And they took him around northern New England and into Quebec for a week and a half, and then we took him around Massachusetts for around 6 days, and then he took off for California for 2 weeks.
Cool. Adam, if there's any videos, please share them in the notes or the chat. We'd love to check it out.
Okay, I have one video at the moment. It's a 2-hour unedited presentation of his. It's very good, but you have to sit through the parts that should have been edited. But that's not such a big deal if you have tea and crumpets or whatever. The other news from my perspective is we have a conference coming up in, let's see, can you see that? Conference coming up on April 30th in Washington, D.C. It's called Scenario 300, Making Climate Cool. And our staff scientist, who had a wide influence, as Judy and Dee Dee, who seems to have vanished, will tell you. And he kind of did a roadmap of how do we get from 400 where we are now, 400 something, down to 300. And he analyzed various ecosystems and how we would store enough carbon and restore enough water so that we get cool again. And I'm going to present a mini version of Michael's talk at that conference, as well as something else. So it's April 30th.
I just posted a link if folks want to check it out online.
Thank you, in downtown DC. And we welcome you all to come. And I'm pleased to announce that Regeneration International is one of our sponsors.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Well, why don't we jump to Joanne and Soka here on the call. I think this is their first regenerative video chat. They're close partners. We co-developed the Regeneration Hub. They actually invented the tool. And so we're actually hoping today to take maybe 10 or 15 minutes of maybe at the end of the call, because we've got Dan joining over the phone. So I'm not sure we want to do a screen share of the platform. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? They're calling in from France.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for welcoming us. So I'm Joanne, and this is Soka. We met Alex and the RI team at the COP21 in Paris a year and a half ago. And it was at a mapping the mappers meeting where we converged on an objective to connect everybody who's working in the regenerative area and find ways of facilitating the collaboration and strengthening the projects in the domain of regeneration. We've been co-founding Open Team, which is an accelerator of climate solutions. And we organize, we have a set of programs that we organize to enable projects to become more mature so that they can become bankable and then replicate. So it's the Scale Camp and Scale School that some of you have maybe heard of. And we can send more information later on. And so since we met Alex and the Regeneration International, we decided to launch the Regeneration Hub that we can present later at the end.
Did the sound kind of get funky for anyone else? Yeah, Joanne, you kind of moved the computer and the sound changed.
Oh, sorry.
That's better, that's better.
So do I need to repeat what I said at the end, or?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Since we met RI, that's where I got cut off at least.
We met, we've been working on building, because I didn't mention that as support of the acceleration programs that we do, we develop digital tools to facilitate the collaboration between actors and not only regenerative, not only in regeneration, but more globally for the climate and for social innovation. So it's quite global. Our reference system are the 17 SDGs. So we're developing digital tools, and including one big one, which is a collaborative platform that enables to map actors from around the world enable them to connect, match their needs and resources, and to be able to share knowledge. And we've developed a version with RI called the Regeneration Hub, which you posted before. We can show a small demo afterwards if you wish. So we're developing this partnership with RI and building up on it and really converging our strengths. And it's a great pleasure to see you guys during this call and see some faces behind everybody that we have in the network.
Nice, thanks, John and Soka. So great to have you. Let's cover that on the kind of the last 15 minutes of the call, in case folks who are calling in by phone might not find it as relevant. I'm afraid. Why don't you go next, Dan? Dan, can you hear us? Are you on mute?
Yeah. Yep. No, I got you.
Okay.
I was
Awesome.
on mute. I'm the troglodyte. Whatever it is. Sorry, I'm not on my computer.
That's okay. We're glad you could join us.
It's been a while. I was on some of the initial calls, but I haven't been on for a while.
He's a barefoot troglodyte, I might add.
Barefoot currently, yes, in one of my hoop houses. So my name is Dan Kittredge. I'm a farmer from Massachusetts, organic farmer, have been most of my life. I also am the founder and executive director of the Bionutrient Food Association. I think a majority of the people here today. As an organization, we've been working on increasing quality in the food supply, and by quality we're referring to nutritive value, flavor and aroma, which we understand correlates with biological system function, which correlates with pest and disease resistance and carbon sequestration and human healing and all these kinds of things that are beautifully interrelated. We've got we're a grassroots organization in the U.S. I've been on the road for the last 3 months speaking in probably 15, 20 states. And I wanted to share with people how our strategy for documenting management practices that correlate with quality and documenting the variations in quality and giving consumers the ability to test quality can be used as a strategy for applying an economic driver to support carbon sequestration and all of its other beautiful corollaries. So if I could have 5 minutes later to go into that a little bit, that'd be great. But
that sounds great, Dan. We'd really love to hear about it. We can wrap up the intros and then why don't we come back to that?
Beautiful.
Jorgen, did I pronounce your name correctly? Jorgen or no?
Jorgen.
Yes, it's Jorgen, yes.
Why don't you go next?
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I'm honored to be with you in this little group. And I am leading the Nordic Savory Hub within the Savory network that Abby's been telling you about earlier. Mm-hmm. So these are the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries as well, at the moment at least. So we are promoting holistic management and regenerative agriculture in these countries, and very much as more of you know, starting from zero, people do not really know anything about this, and we are working on many levels to remove barriers and to simply do some eye-opening about the opportunities within this. And we are a growing number of people, and I am very interested in the part of creating these communities and how we can create very sort of effective communities among the managers, the people managing the land, and even sort of groups who includes the whole local economy, and how we can do that more efficiently. And I believe we are in some kind of a innovating time, finding ways of doing it. Right now, a lot of interesting stuff is going on medias like Facebook and such. People are finding each other and finding knowledge from each other. So I believe a lot in horizontal communication between people, and I guess that's one of the things I'm sharing with you guys. So thank you for having me here.
I would just hasten to add that Jorgen and I were classmates at the first Savory Hub training in 2013.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's incredible. You guys go back.
We go back.
It's so great that you were able to join us today. Thanks for all that you're doing. Looking forward to exchanging strategies. Judy, why don't you go next? Good to see your face again.
Yes, good to see all of you. Yeah, it's great because I've been in touch with all you most of you from different scenarios, from reporting, from meetings, from collaborating. So it's great. So my name is Judy Schwartz, and I'm a journalist. I've written a couple of books that touch on regeneration, eco-regeneration. Cows Save the Planet, about soil, and Water in Plain Sight, about water and how water connects with land, connects with biodiversity and climate, and both of them about focusing on solutions. So I wanted to join the call really to catch up, and I'm glad to hear everybody's news. Just a couple of quick things over here is a lot has been about travel. I was recently in Mexico and was part of a symposium on agriculture and climate in the Mexican Senate. So that was really, really extraordinary. That's with another Savory affiliated group, the Sierra Gorda, Grupo Ecologico Sierra Gordo. Or Sierra Gorda. That was good. Also saw some colleagues in California. And then in a few weeks, I'll be going to Paris. So Joanne, I'm hoping to connect with you. And there is a conference, kind of a strategy conference on soil carbon sequestration. And it'll be really interesting to see what emerges from that, because I know that people who are going to this are really ripe to roll up their sleeves and just get a lot moving. And then, I'm sorry, I'm going to miss you, Jorgen, but we were trying to figure out how we might connect. I'll be going to Norway and doing some events with some people in the Nordic hub, the Savory hub. And also, I mean, this is when it's really fun when these kind of random invitations come along. There's a conference in Trondheim, an art museum is putting on a conference on indigenous culture and sustainability. And so they're looking a lot at the Sami and their grazing practices. So it'll be all about, or a lot about reindeer. So I'm thrilled to be able to take part in that. And then just one other quick thing, just in my ongoing quest to broaden our policy and just, our global conversation about climate. I had a piece in the UK Guardian about bringing water into the climate conversation. I've been very inspired by Mikhail Kravchik, Walter Jena, others who see the importance of water cooling, climate cooling through water, which of course depends on rebuilding soil and basically restoring ecological systems. So I'll post that.
Yeah, that sounds like an incredible concept. So incredible. I'm looking forward to hearing, honestly, how all of that goes. I'll have to join a call after all these events and update us. Thanks, Judy. And
Absolutely.
last but not least, Rob, I know it's late for you. You're calling from Japan.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, my name's Rob Blakemore. I live in Japan. I'm a Brit and an Australian, whatever, and I work on earthworms for many years. I did a study undergrad at Hawley Farm in UK, which is Lady Eve Balfour's original soil association. I looked at earthworms, and I was completely convinced that the farm was divided into 3 sections. One was completely organic, one was conventional, which was arable and single crop using chemicals, and the other was a compromise, a mix between arable and organic. So they had these farms it was one farm divided into 3 sections, which were all independent. So the mixed farm had its own herd, but they used chemicals as well as organic methods. The point is that the farm had been going for 40 years when I studied it, which was probably 40 years ago, and the soil was completely different. So in 40 years, they'd destroyed the soil. It was a huge difference. And this convinced me that earthworms were so key to the whole system, because the earthworm difference is related to all the physical, chemical, biological characteristics of the soil. And since then, I haven't been able to kick the habit, and I've been working on this, but no one's been listening. It's all gone into chemical farming and GMOs, whatever. And now suddenly people are coming back to say, oh, the soil's important. Well, we kind of knew that. It's been denigrated. There's not one soil ecology institute. And maybe someone can tell me if there is one. I've not seen one. I can compare to marine institutes or astronomical institutes. So it's very much a lonely voice. And I'm glad that people are coming on side and trying to support soil and earthworms. And it's the same thing. That's my argument. Earthworms and soil are the same thing. And any system that denies earthworms will fail because they make the soil, and they always have done. This is basic biology. On my background, I'm an ecologist. I study ecology. I did research on pastures, and I studied permaculture with Bill Mollison before he died. And that's my main thing. I do research, but there's so little funding. It's very, very, very difficult to get work published or even acknowledged because it's such a backwater. So you've probably heard my gripe. There's so little support for soil ecology, and I think that's the key. And I don't know why there's no support. So I really do appreciate all the things that people on Regeneration Hub are trying to do. to keep the earth, the soil on the agenda. And I'm happy to join you today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. I'd love to jump to a point that Max just brought up. He asked, could we talk about previous civilizations and the reason behind their collapses? In other words, did they collapse because they destroyed the soil? So because of desertification. Do you guys want to kind of open up that topic for discussion? I think it's an interesting segue from what you're speaking to, Rob, in terms of us not really caring about soil and this hypothesis of destroying our soil being the cause of collapse of civilizations. Adam, I know you wanted to speak to that.
I'm always happy to speak to that too. It's
Yeah,
always part
Dan,
of my
that'd be great
presentation.
too. Cool.
Yeah.
It's certainly a factor, but I would say that the fundamental cause is exceeding carrying capacity and having to expand it beyond the capabilities of the ecosystem to support it. And so we do things that in the short term look as if they work, like the Green Revolution, but in the long term are really very destructive. And civilizations develop levels of complexity, and the more complex they are, the less efficient they are, not in an engineering sense, but in the sense of how well we manage our resources. And increasing complexity leads to collapse. So soil is certainly one of the most important parts of the collapse, but it's not a root cause.
And I would say that, you know, we have lots of historical examples of very sophisticated, very high population density traditional cultures that were able to maintain land for, you know, extended periods of time. I think it's the tillage and the monocultures and that sort of strategy that actually wears out land. I mean, what was going on, the Terra Preta civilization in Brazil, in the Amazon was, you know, there was 100 million people there when whoever it was, Ponce de Leon, came to look for the El Dorado. So yeah, I think it's I always connect it to the polyculture practices, the permaculture practices, the, you know, maintaining of hydration. You know, I think we can have really significant population densities and build soil over time if we manage the soil well. But when we do tillage and dryland agriculture and systemically mine it and wear it out, that's when civilizations collapse. But that's a long conversation.
It is, Dan, and I don't want to argue about it with you here. I just want to suggest to Max that if he hasn't already read Joseph Tainter's Collapse of Complex Societies, that is a great place to start mulling over these questions, because he's an archaeologist who spent 4 years of a sabbatical trying to figure out why civilizations collapse and found no answers anywhere that met his satisfaction. So he came up with his own, and it's essentially an energy equation that to me makes a lot of sense. And I don't argue with anything that Dan said. I just don't look at it as root cause.
All right. Well, yeah, I made a note of that book in the notes, Max. I'd also love to check it out. I've got the book Collapse by Jared Diamond on my bookshelf I haven't gotten to yet, but is that also a recommended read for this topic?
I think it's very interesting, but Diamond doesn't get to the basics the way Tainter does.
Okay, cool. I see a question from Joanne. Could we also, this is actually a really good one, and maybe some folks here are working to do this, could we brainstorm the ways to convince large monoculture practices to switch to regenerative on a large scale? I'd love to learn more about the actions led to enable this, working hand in hand with all the stakeholders in the field. I guess the question is anyone here working to address that, or who are the leaders in kind of working with folks to switch from large-scale monocultures and degenerative practices towards the regenerative?
I'm wondering, Joanne, if you could narrow that question down a little bit, because convincing large monoculture practices, I don't know who that is. Is that
I
Monsanto?
can speak to that. That's what my report is about. Is how we've been working organizationally to, establish the incentive structures to do that transition. I think, this has been part of our organizational agenda from the beginning, is to figure out how to inspire the change, incentivize the change, and we understand these principles about how you can work with biological systems to get holistic, results. The question is, where do you meet people's visceral incentives? And I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basic survival comes before the greater good, and we've drawn a connection between the way the soil is treated and the quality of the food that is produced and the health of the humans and other animals that eat the crops that are produced in the soil. And so we've been trying to tie together the connection between soil health and plant health and human health, and talking about an idea for a very long time of a tool that a consumer could use for testing quality at point of purchase, which would potentially at least inspire an economic driver. If consumers can choose the most nutritious bag of carrots off the shelf, then they will buy those first, presumably, and that'll give an economic driver for farmers who are producing poor quality carrots to change their practices, because they'll be losing their market share. One piece of the puzzle from our perspective is developing the capacity for consumers to test quality. One piece is actually defining quality, because there's a massive variation in nutrient levels in crops. And the third piece is actually identifying empirically the environmental conditions that correlate with an increase in quality, and also carbon sequestration, and also human health. So, I think until we have some really visceral economic drivers in place, we're not going to get the speed of transition that is possible. So figuring out ways to connect the best science and best understanding, best practices with visceral incentives has been our agenda. And
Dan, does this kind of tie in? Yeah, Dan, does this kind of tie into the update that you wanted to give earlier? So do you want to tell us a little more about the tool? Is it available for? Yeah.
Can I just complete my question?
Yeah.
Because maybe you'll probably bounce back also on this complement of my question. It's also on a business model point of view. Most people think that it's going to be more expensive to move from monoculture to regenerative practices, just because it's so easier. It's much easier to just buy the same thing and buy the pesticides and everything that you need to just do it. The whole transition is very expensive. And so it's also on an economic point of view, beyond the incentivization. How do we make a business case for farmers to make this possible? Thanks.
Yeah, so that's, my background is as a farmer, an organic farmer for 30 years. And what I found personally, which sort of inspired this whole process, was that actually, the healthier your plants are, the more money you make, the lower your cost of production is. And so the work of our organization for the past 7 years has been to train growers in principles of biological systems and help them accomplish the results that we understand occur. And so we've got, at this point, local chapters in 16 different states around the U.S. And we've spread primarily through word of mouth. We have a very poor social media, regular media presence. It's really been just farmers talking to farmers and saying, hey, you know what? if you manage air and water and biology and basic minerals and organic matter well, then your plants grow better. So that's what's so exciting, is that you actually do make more money growing healthier plants. I think the biggest issue is ignorance. I don't think it's economic. It's that farmers don't understand how and why, and so that's what we've been working on. So it's quite exciting, actually. The corollaries and implications. I think whatever we want to call big ag, agribusiness, conventional ag, has done a really good job co-opting the research and educational system, and they've been dominating the airwaves with their message, but that doesn't make it true.
Joanne, I would add, on behalf of Alan Savory and crew, that many people come to holistic management and holistic plant grazing because they're about to go out of business, because all the inputs and everything is so expensive, and they switch and they find that they've taken their first vacation in 30 years and life is much easier. Have you seen Soil Carbon Cowboys, the video? I would highly recommend it. It's a 12-minute video. It does a great job of explaining a lot of things. It's by our friend Peter Bick, and just, yeah.
Yeah, and what happens when you begin to work with the soil more well is your input costs go down. When your plants are healthier, they're physiologically indigestible to pests and diseases, and so your pesticide and insecticide budgets go down. And when they're indigestible to pests and diseases, then that's because they're more complex, more flavorful, more aromatic, and more nutritious. It's a beautiful, beautiful synergy between carbon sequestration and human health and everything in between. It's such a wonderful, wonderful connecting of the dots as far as I'm concerned. But just to sort of quickly conclude my section, I don't want to take too much time. We have been talking about this idea of a tool a consumer could use for years as a concept, and technically it's a spectroscopy tool. So basically flash a light at something and read the light that bounces back. It's how we know what Alpha Centauri is made up of, a star that's light years away, not by ever going there and sourcing it, by reading the light off it. And so you can use that practice, that technology, to flash a light at food and determine what's in it. So we've been watching the industry, the technology, and I think we're at a point now where the sensors are inexpensive enough to produce a handheld tool that a consumer could use that would cost maybe $100 plus or minus to manufacture to test quality. And there's a group called SCIO, some people may have heard of, which is actually already building a sensor into a smartphone, so there wouldn't have to be a standalone sensor. We've been talking about the tool as a sort of a hook to get people's attention, but really it's the foundational data that we need to put together, which will really drive it. What is the variation in quality, and most importantly for the growers, what are the management practices and the environmental conditions necessary to produce it? So, for the past 8 months or so, since we decided organizationally to take this project on, we've put together a team that has the open source, farm management software capacity. That's one group called FarmOS. There's another group called FarmHack, which has some sensors, really inexpensive, simple sensors that you can put into the soil and sort of automatically build out your data. I think this would be a wonderful collaboration with the Savory Hubs. I really want to talk to you guys at some point. And then finally, the team out of Michigan State was called PhotoSync, that was building the open source handheld sensors that can go into the field and get readings. And so we've put together that team of collaborators, and we've been going around the country getting sort of thought leaders on board. Gabe Brown from the Soil Carbon Cowboys is very actively supportive. Ray Archuleta from the NRCS talking about cover crops is totally excited. Elaine Ingham, people know about the Soil Food Web. I just was up at her place in the Sierra Nevadas last week talking to her. She's excited and making introductions. Been talking to a lot of the people, not just in the agronomy side, but also in the human health side, about the connections between nutrient levels in food and having food be your medicine and healing systemically degenerative diseases. So we're at the stage right now of shopping our documents around to lay out the plan and getting allies to sign on and raising the money to build the tool and build a database, et cetera. So it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and we're actually in progress on implementation now, which is why I want to just share that with this group. So that's all I got.
Dan, it's Dee Dee Pursehouse. I just wanted to jump in for a sec.
Hi, Dee Dee.
Hi. A couple of questions, and one is if we wanted to join that effort in terms of trying to move the implementation of that forward, what would the steps be? And then my the second thing is that one of the things I wanted to report in is that Peter Donovan at the Soil Carbon Coalition now has a open source free map database that is set up to include nutrient density of food. So no need to reinvent the wheel in terms of that. It's basically already built, and it will put data on a map instantly and can take also large data sets and export them onto maps on anybody else's website if you wanted to do that. So
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I like to say there is some evidence to say that wild plants that grow in nature without the need of human hands, I mean, they are very nutrient dense, not maybe calorically dense, but they are nutrient dense. And I think that we need to also, we need to have it's like a gradient. We need to essentially permaculture the world, and but for me, I find that I'm supplementing my organic food purchases with wild foods, and I think that's a great way to connect with your wild landscape. And not to say that the wild landscape is wild and uncultivated, because when you looked at, for example, Native Americans in California, they had an intimate relationship with the landscape. They weren't just wanderers, but they were tenders of the garden. So I understand. I'm with you here, and I want to encourage people who are interested. I think that foraging is a great way. It takes time to get to know your wild plants or the plants that grow beyond, within the city limits or beyond the city, but it's a great way to get in nutrients from your landscape and information. So I want to say.
Yeah, I'll just respond to a couple of those comments. My understanding is that Native Americans across North and South America were managing the landscape in a very sophisticated manner. And I think that's a strategy we should be looking forward to, using the commons, working with the lands in broad strokes to revitalize it and have it, integrated with food crops. We've got a good example of, I think, Fukuoka from Japan, who is basically growing cultivated plants in a wild manner, and that's what we're talking about. Is people aren't going to stop eating potatoes, but let's just grow potatoes in a much, much, much more natural manner, and we get dramatic, yields and crops people recognize, and dramatic increases in nutrient levels. So that's one response. Didi, I've been, identifying Peter Donovan and that whole project. I want to talk to Savory people. I want to talk to Peter also. I think we're all working on the same team here, and replicating efforts is bad strategy. So I would love to talk to you maybe later about how we can collaborate. Yeah, absolutely. We're not. It's a sufficiently broad and totally open database where everybody can be inputting information that is foundational for us to actually discern empirically what are the causal factors and management practices to be able to argue present a different argument to what conventional ag is putting together.
Yeah, and the
absolutely.
database that he's developing is something that it's more of a tool than it is. It's not really connected to any particular organization, so it's something that BFI could break off and not break off, but I mean could have their own version of it running, collecting data, and it would both populate your own your own needs, but the data would also be saved on a more global database, so that in the future, if something happened to yours, it's all there.
It needs to be a foundational open database. And what's exciting is that we're working with people like the NRCS and all kinds of different land grant universities, Cornell and UVM and UNH and Rodale, and a lot of the sort of quote unquote more legitimate ag research people around this. I've been talking to the ARS and NIFA and DC and Beltsville. They're looking for something like this. There's GODAN, this Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition UN project. There's a really wonderfully coalescing understanding that we need to have a broad spectrum of data before we can tease out the correlations of biological systems.
Exactly.
It's not a reductionist, mechanistic science that works. It's a multi-factor biological, epidemiological style of science we need to be engaging.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, I have
Absolutely.
a curiosity here. Is that handheld spectrometer that you're developing potentially able to measure soil carbon levels?
Yeah, actually, the first versions are going to be soil carbon because that's where people have money to look right now. Yeah, I can talk to you, Adam, about those guys that are working on that. Absolutely.
Great.
Alex, I need to run shortly to another meeting, but I wanted to ask Dan. Dan, it's Abby Smith from the Savory Institute. I would love to connect
Abby.
with you. Yeah, as a
please.
hub leader, and then also from the global standpoint. So I wanted to know more about if you have a chapter or work in California first, and then I would love, like I said, to just talk about how we can do this all together, because this is so the same message, like you were saying. It's so we need to.
We're all on the same team.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We totally are.
Can I be
think
a
there's so much potential for
we have a North Bay chapter just in the sort of Marin and Sonoma counties right now, but nothing farther north than that. I think we've got Southern California and Colorado, and but yeah, the west of the U.S. is less populated than the Midwest and the East right now.
I just want to be a troglodyte for a second. Troglodyte for days, sort of like queen for a day or something like that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think we have to be really careful not to let our enthrallment with science and technology slow us down in actually doing things on the land that we know how to do and that we know are beneficial, even without lots of data.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it can easily do that. We're very easily distracted by toys. I know that. And I don't know that we can afford that at this point.
I agree. Sometimes you just need to look up and it makes sense, like it looks better.
Yeah, it looks better. I mean, yeah.
And tastes better. Yeah. I think, no question, Adam. However, it seems like science and data and gizmos are kind of the language of the time, and so being willing to engage it is something I've been very reticent to do. But I think strategically is of critical import. So
yeah,
ideally, once we've identified what the best practices are formally, empirically. And train people to see without needing tools, all that will be able to pass. So I see this as just a step in the larger re-understanding process.
Can I make a comment? Can I make a comment? You talk about monoculture, and this is a big problem because organic farming traditionally has rotation. And do people know what rotation is?
Yeah.
Does everyone know rotation? It means you mix crops. You don't have a straw crop, or you mix with legumes, and you have a lay period. Lay period means letting the land just regenerate by itself. Have a 1 year where you don't grow anything. You have grass or something. And another thing about monoculture is, for example, rice is monoculture. You grow rice, the same crop every year. This is Asia. I think a third of the world lives on monoculture from rice. And another monoculture, for example, is sugarcane. Sugarcane is the greatest crop to grow. You plant it once, and you can harvest it 3 times, ratoon it. It produces the same thing endlessly. So there's monoculture, but basically the movement they need is to go to rotation, which is traditional farming, where you have alternate crops, which improves the soil. The legumes fix nitrogen, which people think is important. You have a resistance to pests, and the soil builds up its nutrients and different qualities. So all these things are an issue. Like Fukuoka he was a mixed farmer. He had rice as well, and he did it monoculture by leaving the straw and growing through the rice. So I just want to mention that monoculture is not always bad, but in many crops, they need to have rotation, which is basic organic farming. That's my comment.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Really interesting discussion. so just being mindful, we've got about 6 minutes left. We didn't quite to the Generation Hub demo, Joanne and Silka. I don't know if we could do a quick 3-minute one and then just let you guys know that we're hosting kind of slightly regular calls for the Regeneration Hub to kind of focus and hone in on the needs and resources or the needs and offers feature of it, which maybe Joanne could do a quick screen share so that we'll show you. And it's really just all these connections that are happening right now on this call and all the exchanges. Really what we want to do through the hub is kind of accelerate that through this online tool. So we're hosting a call next Wednesday. I'll share a link with you guys if anyone's interested in joining. It's kind of a similar feel of like the networking and exchange, but more focused on that part of it. So Joanne, do you want to do a quick screen share in the last few minutes? Maybe trying to save 2 minutes for last minute announcements from others.
Sure.
Cool.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Can you see the Regeneration Hub, or can you see other things on my screen?
Yeah, I see the hub. Do others?
Okay, great. Well, shall I go ahead?
In 3 minutes.
Well, basically in 3 minutes, the collaborative, so the Regeneration Hub, it's a collaborative platform. There's 2 main functions. First one is referencing and mapping all of the initiatives and the stakeholders. So you can see them here on the discovery page that you can see even when you're not logged in. So going on regenerationhub.co, you're able to see them both in a mosaic view, but also on a map, and filter by project or initiative. Project is in the broad sense of the term, or by individual. And that's also, so individual in terms of a project holder or a citizen or anybody involved in the space. It's also a space, the second function of the platform is to match needs and resources, so needs and offers. And you can see them here already on the discovery page. You can filter on all of the offers that can be human, material, financial, or knowledge-based. And same thing for needs. So it's kind of like a marketplace to be able to access to what you need and what you're looking for more easily according to keywords, themes, location. You can log in on the top right. So here I'm already logged in. And on the top right, it's also where you can add a new need that you may have, or submit a project or an initiative. So creating a need is very easy in 4 steps.
Joanne, you're looking for pianists?
That's on a personal basis. So for example, yeah, I could be. Or if I'm looking for help in soil regeneration, looking for an expert in carbon sequestration, that's where I would create it. And there I would see, oops, here are the people, the matches that are coming up. Well, in fact, it would come up here on the match opportunities. So for soil regeneration, these are, when I post this need, well, here specifically there isn't a direct match, but then we bring up the indirect matches and people or projects that correspond. And then you can get in touch with them, see what they do, see that, okay, I'm interested in getting in touch with them for their landscape restoration offer, for example, that you can see on the right side. I'm going really fast on purpose.
But we'll do a longer one next week. So if anyone's interested in joining, I'll share a link.
So just to show you, you can go on the pages, you can surf and see who's doing what they offer. And then when you're interested in contacting them, you can directly get in touch with them. If you haven't logged in, there it will ask you to create your profile. It takes just a few minutes. And then you specifically, when you contact somebody, you say specifically why you're contacting them. And at any point of time on the left, you've got this recycling icon, which shows you all of the different resources or needs that you have, and you can manage who you're in touch with, who you're collaborating with, etc. And at any point of time, you can contact them and access the chat room where you can see the conversations that you have with people and where you stand with them. It's really slow here. And yeah, and last thing is that you can visualize your network, all the people you're in touch with, add some personal notes, look through keywords and other ways into that network with who you're engaged. So it's really finding people to engage with and then facilitating the engagements.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a brief rundown of what the Regeneration Hub is. We're in the process of evaluating the microgrants competition that we had going, and should announce the people who won in May. So yeah, I'll circulate a link if anyone's interested in joining another kind of networking call like this, but more kind of geared towards, again, exchanging the needs and offers next week.
And it's in two languages, English, French, and Spanish. So
yes.
So it's open to everybody to talk about it and invite and involve others, so that the more we are on here, the better and the easier it will be to find what you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joanne and Silka. Why don't we open up the floor for any kind of last minute announcements, things you want to share, news. Anyone have anything? Dee Dee, we never even got to have you introduce yourself. I apologize. I think you're experiencing technical difficulties.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to do that now if you're running out of time. I'll just take 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Dee is from the Soil Carbon Coalition and author of The Ecology of Care that gets into a lot of this. Two things.
I'm sorry, Dee Dee. I have to just say that it is a wonderful book and I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Just two things. One is that on soilcarboncoalition.org/learn, we now have several kind of lesson plans that can be used by pretty much any age group around thinking about whole systems, landscape function, and soil health and regeneration. And we're adding more to those every month. And the other is if you go to same thing, soilcarboncoalition.org/atlas, you'll get a link to the site atlasbiowork.com, plus some videos about that database and how to use it. It can be used from handheld devices or computers, and it's a really easy way of uploading data directly, and we can also take larger data sets to put them in there. So we're basically just came out with this, and looking forward to starting to populate it with data. So it's sort of a citizen science build out from the Soil Carbon Challenge that Peter's been doing for the last 6 years all over North America. And the next step will be to add a layer so that we can do like NASA and other satellite data with photosynthesis, water stores from the GRACE satellite, etc. So.
And we're looking at ways to cross-collaborate between the map Dee Dee's speaking about and the hub. So we'll hopefully be able to cross-pollinate. All right, well, thanks for that, Dee Dee. And anybody else have any last-minute announcements in the last couple minutes here?
Get outside.
Get outside. Yeah, good announcement.
Tonight I found out that I've had a short communication accepted in Nature magazine journal for about earthworms. So it's a comment on someone else's article. So that's a little bit of progress for promoting earthworms.
Yay for earthworms.
Rob sent us the link. Send us the link when it comes out.
Yeah.
Rob, yesterday we met the Mr. Earthworm of France. I'll connect you to him. He's great. And I got my first earthworm compost that I'm going to start using for my plants at home. So I'm so proud.
Who is it? His
website is Mr. Lombric.
Mr. Earthworm.
Literally in French, because earthworm in French is Lombric. Something like that. I'll connect you to him. I'll find it.
Thank you. Merci.
I just had one question. Is anybody planning to go to Bonn for the intermediate climate conference, which is taking place from the 8th to the 18th of May?
Where is it?
In Bonn, Germany.
Germany. Oh.
So it's kind of like an intermediate COP to prepare, and we're going there to position the platform as the COP connecting platform to connect actors for one
between COPs.
Between COPs.
So there's all this excitement and buzz that happens at COPs, and then what happens in between and afterwards. So it's a tool to really increase those connections.
Kind of a broader version of the platform, connecting all the actors that go to the COP so that they can stay in link.
And maybe just one more note. I'll be in China next month for the IFOAM Asia Congress, speaking to the people don't know IFOAM, the International Federation of Organic Movements, and their Organic 3.0 conversation, which is talking about full system accountability. So there hasn't been a lot of the Asia community discussed here, but that's another piece of the puzzle, which will hopefully be integrating into the conversation.
Yeah, there are a couple of people over there.
It's Japan, I've heard so far, but yeah, it's a wonderful global community coalescing. It's so exciting to be part of it.
Thanks, Dan. Safe travels. That's exciting. So let's wrap up. Thank you all for joining today, and hope you can join the call next week if you're interested. I'll share a link about that, and maybe see you next month. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Bye,
Have a great
everybody.
day.
Bye.
Rob,
Bye.
let's talk. Jorgen, let's connect.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, let's do that.
Bye, everyone.
See you soon in Paris.